Antarctica has always carried with it a silence unlike any other place on Earth. It is a silence so vast, so absolute, that it can swallow the voices of entire civilizations. What if, hidden beneath the thick frozen crust of this immense southern continent, there were echoes of a people long forgotten? Perhaps even the very first civilization the world has ever known. The thought unsettles and excites in equal measure. It challenges every neat timeline built by archaeologists and every confident statement about the origins of human culture. It suggests that what we think of as beginnings might instead be fragments, written over the deeper story buried under the ice. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. And as always, let me know your local time and where you're listening from in the comments. Now, let us begin. The earliest explorers of Antarctica never imagined such questions. To them, it was a void at the bottom of the maps, a white emptiness with no story to tell. And yet, even in antiquity, there were whispers of a terra australis incognita, an unknown southern land that balanced the world. Greek philosophers debated its existence long before any sail reached the icy waters. Some argued it was essential. If the Earth was a sphere, then surely there had to be a counterweight to the lands of the north. What they could not have known was that this idea, born in speculation, might one day intersect with physical discovery. Antarctica, as we know it today, is the coldest, driest place on Earth. Ice blankets it in layers up to 3 miles thick, pressing down on ancient rock and flattening any clue that life once thrived there. But scientists have revealed that this frozen wasteland has not always been so. Geological studies show that during earlier epochs, Antarctica was lush with forests, rivers, and a climate closer to today's northern Europe. Fossilized ferns, petrified wood, and even dinosaur bones have been unearthed near its coastlines, proving that once upon a time, warmth and life flourished where today there is only snow. This is where the first questions begin to creep in. If Antarctica was once a habitable landscape, who or what may have lived there? Could it have hosted not only animals and plants, but also humans, or perhaps proto-civilizations predating all those known? Most historians dismiss such thoughts as imaginative fiction, preferring to keep the origin of complex culture within Mesopotamia, Egypt, or the Indus Valley. But there are anomalies that resist such dismissal. One of the most famous anomalies is the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral who claimed to have used far older charts as references. The map seems to show the coast of South America with surprising accuracy, centuries before modern mapping. More curiously, some researchers argue that the map depicts a portion of Antarctica without its ice. If true, the implication is staggering. Someone, somewhere, charted the continent when its coastline was visible, which could mean tens of thousands of years ago. Scholars are still debating whether this is a coincidence of artistic error, or whether it truly represents knowledge we should not expect from the 16th century. To add to this unsettling puzzle, modern satellite studies have revealed land masses and shapes beneath the ice that defy easy explanation. In some regions, what appears to be natural mountain ridges have been interpreted by enthusiasts as geometric, even pyramidal. The human mind is prone to seeing patterns, but when symmetry emerges in places beyond human reach, the temptation to wonder is irresistible. Could these be natural formations sculpted by ice and erosion, or the remains of ancient architecture buried deeper than our history books allow? Historical precedent suggests that civilizations rise and fall, leaving traces often misunderstood or ignored until rediscovered. The ruins of Troy were once dismissed as legend until a determined archaeologist dug them up from beneath layers of soil. The lost cities of Central America lay concealed under jungles until explorers cleared the vines. Is it truly impossible to imagine that another such discovery might lie under Antarctic ice, preserved by the very forces that conceal it? This is not merely a question of curiosity. If such a civilization existed, it would alter the story of humanity's development. It would imply that complex societies may have emerged far earlier, in climates we do not associate with human progress. It would push back the clock, forcing us to rethink migrations, technologies, and the fragile relationship between humans and shifting climates. It would also confront us with an uncomfortable idea, that our current civilization, with all its confidence, may not be the first to rise to a global scale. In recent years, the scientific community has contributed findings that fuel this speculation. Ice core samples taken from Antarctica have revealed not just climatic fluctuations, but hints of sudden cataclysmic events. Layers of ash trapped within the ice point to violent volcanic eruptions. Sharp chemical signatures suggest meteorite impacts or cosmic dust influxes. These align with theories of abrupt climate change, which could transform a fertile land into a frozen wilderness within a geological blink of an eye. If humans lived there, their world could have been erased nearly overnight. Outside of science, myths and oral traditions add strange voices to the conversation. Tales of lost southern lands told in Polynesia, South America, and even ancient Greece seem out of place unless they carried some shadow of reality. Some researchers suggest that myths may preserve distant cultural memories of migrations, islands, or even continents that were swallowed by ice or ocean. Others caution against such leaps, pointing out how often myths blend imagination and reality. Yet the convergence of stories from opposite ends of the Earth raises at least the possibility of a shared memory of something lost. In the modern era, Antarctica is one of the least explored places on Earth. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, protects it as a continent devoted to peace and science, prohibiting military activity and restricting permanent settlements. While noble in intent, the treaty has also created a veil of secrecy around the continent. Access is limited, research is tightly controlled, and large areas remain untouched. This has only deepened the sense of mystery, feeding speculation that discoveries, whether geological, archaeological, or otherwise, are quietly hidden from the public eye. Every theory, every anomaly, every unexplained map or myth invites the same haunting question: what lies beneath? Could Antarctica truly conceal a forgotten chapter of human history, one that would rewrite everything we thought we knew? Or is the truth simpler, bound by the slow movements of glaciers, the shifting of continents, and the fallibility of human imagination? The debate remains open, and the silence of Antarctica continues to guard its secret. The story begins here, with ice that may not simply hide lifeless rock, but perhaps, just perhaps, the remains of the first civilization. The possibility of Antarctica hiding a lost civilization leads directly to an even broader and older speculation, the lost continent hypothesis. Long before modern satellites traced the outlines of ice sheets, long before explorers sailed into the southern seas, there was an idea rooted in balance, symmetry, and imagination. Ancient geographers believed the world required a southern landmass, terra australis incognita, to counterbalance the known continents of the north. Though it began as theory rather than discovery, the notion of this hidden land shaped maps, myths, and even the ambitions of explorers for centuries. During the age of Greek philosophy, minds like Aristotle and Ptolemy entertained the concept of an unknown southern land. Ptolemy's maps, in particular, sketched great stretches of uncharted space at the bottom of the world, filled in with speculative continents. It was not merely whim, there was logic behind it. To the ancients, the Earth was a sphere, and symmetry demanded that land in the north must be balanced by land in the south. Even without ships or compasses, they imagined Antarctica into existence, an intellectual placeholder for a balance they felt the world required. Scholars are still debating whether such maps were purely abstract, or if they drew on distant hearsay carried along ancient trade routes. By the Middle Ages, this idea evolved in curious ways. European map makers depicted enormous southern continents covering nearly half the globe, stretching across unknown seas. These maps combined fragments of inherited Greek thought with speculation, religious symbolism, and imaginative art. For some, this land became not only a balance for geography, but also a canvas for morality tales, home to strange creatures, monstrous races, or unimaginable wealth. In a way, the lost continent hypothesis was less about what existed, and more about what humans projected onto the unknown. Then came the scientific revelations of geology. The theory of continental drift, introduced in the early 20th century by Alfred Wegener, gave new substance to old imaginings. Wegener proposed that the continents were once joined in a supercontinent, Pangaea, that broke apart and drifted to their present positions. At the southern heart of this reconstruction lay Gondwana, a vast prehistoric landmass that included Antarctica, South America, Africa, India, and Australia. Suddenly, the lost continent was no longer merely myth. It had a name, a history, and a place in scientific understanding. Fossil evidence supported this view. Identical plant species like the fern Glossopteris were found in rock layers across South America, Africa, and Antarctica, suggesting that these lands were once united. Likewise, remains of similar reptilian species were discovered on continents now separated by thousands of miles of ocean. Antarctica, though buried beneath ice, emerged as a keystone in the puzzle of Earth's ancient geography. Its icy silence was not timeless. It was the after-effect of colossal shifts in the planet's crust, a reminder of deep time and changing climates. But for those who suspect a hidden civilization, the lost continent hypothesis is more than geological history. It provides a plausible setting. If Antarctica was once part of a vast temperate landmass, if forests stretched across its valleys and animals roamed its plains, then it is not impossible to imagine humans, or pre-human cultures, finding refuge there. The great migrations that carried Homo sapiens across the globe may have touched Antarctica in ways we cannot yet confirm, and if such a culture thrived, its disappearance beneath ice might explain why so little trace remains. Catastrophe looms large in these hypotheses. One version suggests that a sudden shift of the Earth's crust repositioned Antarctica, dragging it from a temperate latitude into the polar circle in mere geological moments. The idea of a pole shift gained traction in the mid-20th century, advanced by theorists such as Charles Hapgood. If correct, it would mean that Antarctica was not always a land of ice, but one violently thrust into cold, freezing over an existing ecosystem, possibly even a civilization. The mainstream scientific community is cautious, skeptical of such rapid movements, but the theory lingers in the cultural imagination. It offers a dramatic explanation for how a thriving world might vanish in an instant. Meanwhile, the fossil record adds hints of mystery. In recent decades, expeditions have uncovered remains of ancient rainforests preserved beneath the Antarctic ice. Layers of soil contain pollen from trees that once reached toward a sunlit sky. Fossils of amphibians and reptiles suggest ecosystems far richer than expected. If Antarctica was once green, then perhaps it was also once habitable for humans. The transition from that lush landscape to the frozen desert we see today remains one of the most extreme shifts in Earth's climate history. There is another layer of speculation, that Antarctica was once the true Atlantis. While Plato's Atlantis has traditionally been associated with the Mediterranean or the Atlantic Ocean, some theorists have reinterpreted his descriptions through the lens of Antarctica's lost continent. A vast, powerful civilization destroyed by sudden catastrophe, buried beneath water and ice, it fits, at least in outline. Whether this connection is credible or not, it illustrates how myths adapt to new theories, binding ancient stories to modern discoveries. And yet, every hypothesis rests on a fragile balance between evidence and imagination. The geological story of Gondwana is well established, grounded in fossils and stratigraphy. But the leap from prehistoric forest to human civilization is far more tenuous. Historians are still debating whether early humans could have reached Antarctica at all, given its remoteness and the challenges of crossing southern oceans. Some argue that the technology required for such voyages was beyond Paleolithic or even Neolithic societies. Others, however, point to the surprising navigational skills of ancient seafarers who reached islands across the Pacific thousands of years before modern navigation. Could it be that similar feats carried explorers southward, toward the edge of the unknown? Curiously, the lost continent hypothesis does not stand alone. Around the world, tales of sunken lands persist. Lemuria in the Indian Ocean, Mu in the Pacific, Atlantis in the Atlantic. Each is a cultural echo of something lost, a reminder that humans across time have sensed absences in the geography of their world. Whether these myths reflect geological events, such as rising seas after the Ice Age, or whether they preserve memories of forgotten cultures, they feed into the same question: how much of history lies hidden, waiting to be uncovered? The notion of Antarctica as a lost continent is therefore both scientific and mythical. It bridges the rational understanding of plate tectonics with the poetic longing for forgotten worlds. It is a place where hard evidence of fossilized forests meets whispered legends of civilizations erased by ice. And it is in that space between science and speculation that the possibility of Antarctica as Earth's first cradle of culture continues to grow. Long before satellites captured high-resolution images of Antarctica's coastlines, long before ice-penetrating radar revealed mountains and rivers buried under miles of glacial crust, there were maps that should not exist. They rest in archives, etched on parchment or copied from older sources, bearing details that defy the limits of their time. Chief among them is the enigmatic Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an admiral of the Ottoman fleet. On its worn surface, scholars see what appear to be fragments of South America, and, more controversially, hints of an ice-free Antarctica drawn centuries before the continent's official discovery. The Piri Reis map was compiled from numerous sources, some dating back to classical antiquity. The admiral himself noted that he relied on 20 ancient charts, many long lost to history, to construct his depiction of the world. What startled researchers in the 20th century was its accuracy in depicting the eastern coast of South America. At a time when much of that coastline was still unexplored by Europeans, the precision suggested access to knowledge that should not have been available. Even stranger, beneath the South American outline, a landmass appears that some interpret as Antarctica, its coastal contours visible without the overlay of ice. If true, the implications are staggering. It would mean that someone, in some distant past, had mapped the southern continent in conditions not seen for tens of thousands of years. Mainstream historians argue for caution. The anomalies could be explained as errors, distortions introduced as multiple map sources were combined, or perhaps misinterpretations of South American geography. The lower coastline may simply represent an elongated rendering of South America itself. Yet the resemblance to Antarctica has been too strong for many to dismiss entirely. Scholars are still debating whether the Piri Reis map reflects ancient geographical knowledge or merely the accidents of copying and imagination. The Piri Reis map is not alone. The Orontius Phineus map, published in 1531, portrays a southern continent with surprising detail. Its coastline, rivers, and mountain ranges seem oddly prescient, as if glimpsed through the centuries before modern discovery. Some researchers claim the contours align with radar images of Antarctica beneath its ice sheets. Again, skeptics point out distortions, but the pattern is undeniable. Multiple maps from the Renaissance depict a southern continent centuries before Captain James Cook, and later expeditions confirmed its existence. The Boache map, created in 1737, adds to the enigma. It presents Antarctica divided into two separate landmasses with a sea between them, something remarkably similar to the way ice-penetrating radar later revealed the continent's bedrock, East Antarctica and West Antarctica, separated by the Transantarctic Mountains. To some, this is uncanny evidence of advanced knowledge predating modern science. To others, It is coincidence shaped by creative guesswork. The debate lingers, unresolved, with every side aware of the profound consequences if the maps are more than chance. If Antarctica was indeed mapped before it was entombed in ice, the question becomes, who mapped it? This opens the door to hypotheses both reasonable and radical. Some suggest early seafaring civilizations, perhaps Phoenicians or even older Mediterranean cultures, managed voyages far beyond what conventional history credits them with. Others speculate that unknown peoples long erased from history explored and charted the globe in ways forgotten by time. A more radical fringe proposes influences from lost civilizations like Atlantis, their knowledge scattered and preserved in fragments through later cartographers. The very existence of these maps intersects curiously with myths of global navigation. Stories from Polynesia, South America, and even Northern Europe describe journeys across immense seas, often guided by stars and memory rather than instruments. Modern archaeologists have been surprised at the sophistication of ancient navigators who settled distant islands of the Pacific thousands of years before the compass. If they could achieve such feats, might others have ventured further, tracing coastlines we once believed unreachable? There are also curious historical references to lands at the bottom of the world. Greek and Roman writers mention Terra Australis, a vast southern continent required to balance the known world. Their words, filtered through centuries of speculation, may have shaped the maps of the Renaissance. But some scholars have suggested that fragments of genuine ancient geographical knowledge, traded, copied, and reinterpreted, might have survived into the Middle Ages, resurfacing on the desks of European cartographers. If so, what was the original source? The potential age of such knowledge leads back to the Ice Age. Around 12,000 years ago, Earth's climate shifted dramatically as the last glacial maximum ended. Sea levels rose, coastlines shifted, and regions once habitable became submerged or frozen. If a culture capable of mapping coastlines had existed during that transitional era, its memory could have been lost amid floods and extinctions. Later civilizations may have inherited fragments of its knowledge, stripped of context but preserved in mysterious maps. This hypothesis blurs the line between archaeology and speculation, yet it remains a possibility that refuses to fade. Even more provocative is the possibility that these maps were part of guarded traditions, passed secretly through ancient priesthoods, mystery schools, or esoteric societies. During the Renaissance, knowledge from the ancient world was rediscovered, translated, and sometimes deliberately hidden. Could the cartographers who drew southern continents have relied on ancient manuscripts lost to public record? If so, those manuscripts themselves may have been copies of something older still. This chain of transmission complicates the search for origins, but it also feeds the allure of mystery. Of course, skeptics remind us of the human tendency to find patterns where none exist. Map makers of the Renaissance often filled unknown regions with imaginative inventions, sea monsters, speculative coastlines, and continents that had not been discovered. The Orontius Phineus map may reflect nothing more than guesswork. The Boache map might be a projection of speculation. Historians argue that to read precise accuracy into them is to fall into confirmation bias. Yet the persistence of these coincidences remains troubling, especially as scientific discoveries echo elements of the old maps. A strange off-topic event adds another layer of curiosity. In 1929, when the Piri Reis map was rediscovered in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, it immediately caught the attention of both historians and military officials. Reports suggest that even modern intelligence agencies took an interest in the cartographic anomalies. This fascination was not purely academic. Accurate pre-modern maps of polar regions would imply levels of exploration and knowledge with implications for navigation, trade, and even geopolitics. The intersection of ancient cartography and modern secrecy highlights how deeply these anomalies unsettle conventional narratives. What emerges from these maps is not certainty, but a profound invitation to reconsider history. If they are errors, then they reflect the boundless imagination of Renaissance cartographers. If they are echoes of forgotten knowledge, then they hint at civilizations capable of exploration long before the age of European empires. In either case, they sharpen the sense of mystery surrounding Antarctica. Beneath the ice, beneath the weight of centuries, there may lie not only a continent, but also a key to a chapter of human history we have yet to turn. Myths are the echoes of voices that no longer speak. They travel across centuries, reshaped in the retelling, yet carrying fragments of forgotten memories. When it comes to Antarctica, an intriguing question arises. Do ancient myths from distant corners of the world preserve a hidden recollection of a southern land, perhaps once known and later erased by time and ice? The possibility has fascinated historians and storytellers alike, for if memory lingers in myth, then stories may be the only surviving witness to a civilization swallowed whole. The Greeks left some of the earliest traces of this idea. Their philosophers debated the existence of Terra Australis long before any ships ventured so far south. Aristotle and Strabo wrote of a great land at the edge of the known world, conceived not from observation, but from the logic of symmetry. The earth, they reasoned, must balance itself. If there were continents in the north, then there must be one in the south. While these accounts may not reflect true knowledge, they created a framework of expectation, a placeholder in human thought for a land that had yet to be discovered. Scholars are still debating whether such classical hints were purely speculative or whether they drew faintly on rumours carried through ancient trade networks. Further west, Polynesian traditions told of vast journeys across the Pacific guided by stars and memory. Their oral histories describe islands that appear, vanish, and sometimes re-emerge in mythic cycles. In some accounts, navigators spoke of a land in the far south, a place of dangerous seas and shifting skies. These stories may reflect encounters with sub-Antarctic islands such as New Zealand or the Kerguelen Islands. Yet some researchers wonder if they preserve an ancestral memory of exploration that stretched further, brushing against the Antarctic Circle. Such interpretations are controversial, but they illuminate how myth often expands beyond the boundaries of what seems possible. South America also contributes tantalizing clues. Among the myths of the Andes, stories tell of gods emerging from the sea, bearing knowledge and tools to uplift humanity. Viracocha, a creator deity in Inca tradition, is said to have come from the waters of Lake Titicaca before travelling across the Andes, teaching people skills and laws. Some later chroniclers, hearing these tales, suggested that Viracocha came not merely from the lake, but from the distant south, across the ocean. Could this be a distorted recollection of contact with a land to the far south? Perhaps even Antarctica itself, when it was still habitable. There are also myths of cataclysm. Across the world, traditions speak of great floods, sudden freezing, and lands swallowed by the sea. The Hopi of North America, the Sumerians of Mesopotamia, and the Maori of New Zealand all recount variations of a story in which an older world was destroyed and a new one born. Within this universal theme, some theorists detect the faint outline of Antarctica, a land once fertile, now obliterated by ice. While mainstream historians caution against drawing direct lines between myth and geography, the persistence of these themes across cultures invites speculation. One particularly strange account comes from medieval Europe. In 14th century texts, there are tales of sailors reaching a southern land filled with mountains and strange animals. Though dismissed as fantasy, these stories sometimes describe conditions oddly reminiscent of Antarctica's pre-glacial past, with forests and rivers in places now buried beneath ice. Were these imaginative inventions, or distorted echoes of older traditions that remembered Antarctica as it once was? The myth of Atlantis hovers at the edge of all such discussions. Plato's tale describes a powerful civilization destroyed by sudden catastrophe, swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. While most interpretations place Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean or the Mediterranean, some fringe theories relocate it to Antarctica. The parallels are tempting: a lost civilization, buried under water and ice, erased from history yet lingering in memory. Whether or not Plato's story corresponds to any real event, it demonstrates how deeply humanity is drawn to the idea of forgotten worlds. Even in more recent traditions, hints of southern lands persist. Portuguese sailors in the 15th century spoke of vast continents to the south, described in fragments that combined rumour, imagination, and perhaps genuine encounters with uncharted islands. Some of these accounts fueled the voyages of discovery that eventually circled the globe. In this sense, myth served as a compass, pointing explorers toward what they hoped to find, even when they had no proof. The intersection of myth and Antarctica is not only about geography, it is about memory. Human cultures have always preserved memories of cataclysm, whether through flood legends, fire myths, or tales of ice and darkness. These stories may encode real events, volcanic eruptions, rising seas, comet strikes, experienced by ancestors and passed down in symbolic form. If Antarctica was once habitable, and if a civilization truly lived there, then its sudden disappearance beneath ice would have been one of the greatest catastrophes in human prehistory. Could myths of lost lands, scattered across continents, be faint recollections of that disaster? There is, however, no clear answer. Historians are still debating whether myths can be taken as historical sources at all. Some argue that they preserve kernels of truth wrapped in symbolism, while others insist they are purely cultural creations, shaped by imagination rather than memory. Yet the persistence of certain themes, sunken lands, sudden cataclysm, knowledge from the sea, suggests a common thread. At the very least, myths reveal what humanity has always suspected, that our history is incomplete, and that somewhere, something vast may have been lost. A curious off-topic example illustrates how myth and memory can intertwine. In the 19th century, explorers in South America recorded a story from indigenous people about giant white birds flying southward, never to return. To the locals, this was a myth explaining the migration of unknown creatures. To modern eyes, it sounds eerily like a distorted memory of large seabirds, perhaps albatrosses, whose migratory paths do indeed arc toward the southern seas. What appears mythic may sometimes contain a kernel of natural observation, just as stories of lost southern lands may hold fragments of a deeper truth. The myths of Greece, Polynesia, and South America do not prove the existence of an Antarctic civilization, but they do remind us that memory is long and imagination longer still. They suggest that the silence of Antarctica may not be absolute, that across cultures and centuries, whispers of a land at the bottom of the world have persisted, waiting to be rediscovered. The landscape of Antarctica is a puzzle locked beneath 3 miles of ice. To the human eye, it appears lifeless, an endless sheet of white stretching toward the horizon, sculpted only by wind and weather. But beneath that ice lies a geological archive older than any written memory. Scientists who have dared to peer through the frozen veil have uncovered rivers that never see the sun, mountain ranges hidden for millions of years, and signs of a climate so radically different from today that it almost defies imagination. If Antarctica is hiding the traces of the world's first civilization, its geology would hold the silent clues. Seismic surveys carried out during the International Geophysical Year of 1957-58 offered the first glimpses of the buried continent. Using sound waves to map what could not be seen, researchers discovered the Gamburtsev Mountains, an entire range the size of the Alps concealed beneath the ice sheet. The revelation startled geologists, for such mountains are not supposed to exist beneath the crushing weight of ice. Their presence raised questions. How old were they, and what kind of climate once shaped their peaks? The Gamburtsevs became a geological ghost, a reminder that even massive mountain ranges can be swallowed whole. Later radar surveys revealed still more extraordinary features. Beneath the ice lies Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth, sealed away for perhaps 15 million years. Its waters are liquid not because of sunlight, but because geothermal heat rises from below, preventing it from freezing solid. Scientists drilling into the ice above Vostok discovered microbes that may have been isolated for eons, a glimpse into ecosystems that defy conventional understanding. If life can survive in such conditions, it lends weight to the idea that Antarctica's depths may conceal more than we expect. In speculation, some wonder, if microbes can persist for millions of years beneath ice, could artifacts or even human traces be equally well preserved? Geology also tells the story of a warmer Antarctica. Fossil evidence shows that around 90 million years ago, during the Cretaceous, the continent was blanketed with rainforests. Sediments taken from deep beneath the ice revealed pollen grains from ancient conifers and flowering plants, evidence of a thriving temperate landscape. More recently, fossilized wood and leaves discovered along Antarctica's coasts confirm that forests extended even near the poles. Dinosaurs once walked there, amphibians thrived in its rivers, birds nested among its trees. The shift from such richness to today's barren ice is one of the most dramatic climate transformations in Earth's history. But the most compelling evidence lies in the more recent past. Studies suggest that as late as 30 million years ago, Antarctica's ice sheets were intermittent, rising and falling with climate cycles. More provocatively, there is data suggesting warm periods within the last few million years when parts of the continent may have been ice-free. During these windows, Antarctica could have supported ecosystems similar to modern tundra or boreal forests. If early humans, or a civilization predating known history, ever reached the southern continent, these warmer intervals would have provided the opportunity. Geothermal activity continues to shape Antarctica today. Volcanic hotspots, some still active, lie hidden beneath the ice. Mount Erebus, a towering stratovolcano on Ross Island, erupts regularly, its lava lake glowing amid the frozen desert. Seismic studies suggest that dozens of other volcanoes lie buried under the ice, their heat carving subglacial channels and lakes. Some researchers argue that this geothermal warmth might accelerate melting, exposing landscapes unseen for millions of years. To those who speculate about hidden civilizations, geothermal energy provides a tantalizing possibility, a natural source of heat that could have sustained life even as the ice advanced. Strange anomalies deepen the intrigue. In 2006, satellite surveys detected a vast circular feature beneath the Wilkes Land ice sheet, nearly 300 kilometers across. Some geologists interpret it as an impact crater, possibly created by an asteroid that struck Antarctica around 250 million years ago, an event that could have triggered mass extinctions. Others suggest more mundane explanations, but the anomaly continues to provoke speculation. To fringe theorists, the circular form resembles something artificial, perhaps even the remains of colossal architecture buried beneath ice. The mainstream view remains cautious, but the mystery persists. Ice itself is a geological storyteller. Each layer preserves a record of past climates, volcanic eruptions, cosmic dust, even fluctuations in greenhouse gases. Ice cores drilled from Antarctica stretch back hundreds of thousands of years, chronicling the planet's changing atmosphere. They show sudden shifts, periods when temperatures spiked or plummeted in ways that could devastate ecosystems. One such event, around 12,900 years ago, marks the Younger Dryas, a period of abrupt cooling possibly triggered by a comet impact. Some theorists link this event to global flood myths and the destruction of an advanced Ice Age culture. If Antarctica held such a culture, the Younger Dryas could explain its sudden disappearance beneath ice and snow. A curious off-topic example illustrates how much remains hidden. In 2013, scientists studying radar images discovered what looked like a network of ancient river valleys buried under the East Antarctic ice sheet. These valleys, carved by flowing water millions of years ago, were as large as those of the Nile or the Mississippi. Though purely geological in nature, They hint at a time when Antarctica's surface supported immense rivers, fertile plains, and perhaps even human habitation. The rivers themselves are long gone, but their imprint endures, frozen into the bedrock like a map of another world. The geology of Antarctica therefore offers both answers and questions. It confirms that the continent was once lush and habitable. It demonstrates that entire mountain ranges, lakes and valleys can be hidden beneath ice for millions of years. It reveals sudden shifts in climate that could erase entire ecosystems. Yet it also leaves open the tantalizing possibility that if humans ever reached Antarctica during its warmer periods, their traces might still lie preserved, locked away in layers of ice and stone. Historians are still debating how far back human exploration can reasonably be pushed. Archaeological evidence confirms human presence in South America at least 14,000 years ago, and perhaps much earlier. Seafaring cultures reached remote islands of the Pacific long before modern navigation. If such peoples ventured south, Antarctica may not have been entirely unknown. The geological record assures us that if they arrived, the land they saw was not the barren desert we imagine today, but something altogether different. A landscape where forests grew and rivers ran, waiting to be rediscovered beneath the ice. If Antarctica once held forests, rivers, and a habitable climate, the next natural question is whether signs of human presence might still linger beneath its ice. For decades, scattered claims, strange anomalies, and controversial reports have suggested that the continent may not be as untouched as it seems. Some of these claims have been discredited, others remain unresolved, and a few continue to stir debate, quietly hinting at the possibility that human footprints once pressed into Antarctic soil long before the first recorded expeditions arrived. One of the most frequently cited anomalies is the appearance of pyramidal mountains in satellite imagery. Photos taken from orbit show sharp, triangular peaks rising from the snow, their symmetry uncanny against the chaotic backdrop of ice and rock. To many they look like pyramids, massive and deliberate, built on a scale to rival Giza. Geologists are quick to explain them as nunataks, isolated mountain summits exposed above the surrounding ice sheet, their angular shape carved by wind and erosion. Yet the resemblance is difficult to ignore, and to some theorists, the possibility of artificial construction remains alive. Historians are still debating whether these formations are purely natural or if there is more to their geometry than coincidence. Another controversial claim emerged from accounts of World War II. Rumours circulated that Nazi expeditions to Antarctica in the late 1930s discovered ancient structures or established secret bases. The story often merges with speculation about hidden technology, underground caverns, and suppressed discoveries. While mainstream history records that Germany did send exploratory missions, there is little credible evidence of anything beyond scientific surveys. Still, the persistence of the legend demonstrates how easily Antarctica's silence becomes a canvas for human imagination. The combination of a hostile environment, limited access, and global secrecy makes it fertile ground for speculation. More tangible are the stories of out-of-place artifacts, objects reportedly discovered in Antarctica that do not fit the conventional timeline. In some fringe accounts, explorers claim to have found stone tools or even carved objects embedded in rock or ice. Most of these reports are anecdotal, lacking physical evidence or proper documentation. Yet the very idea invites curiosity. If humans reached Antarctica during its warmer epochs, they would have left behind tools, dwellings, and art, just as they did in Africa, Europe, and Asia. The question is not whether artifacts could exist, but whether they have survived the crushing weight of glaciers and the erosion of time. A peculiar case comes from the 1940s, when the Chilean Navy reportedly recovered unusual metallic objects along Antarctic shores. Description suggested a technology more advanced than expected, fueling rumours of lost civilizations or even extraterrestrial contact. Mainstream historians dismiss these stories as misinterpretations, but they illustrate how often Antarctica blurs the line between fact and legend. In environments so remote and hostile, small discoveries can easily grow into myths. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. Satellite surveys have revealed anomalies beneath the ice that some interpret as geometric or architectural. In 2012, researchers announced the detection of what appeared to be large, rectangular structures buried beneath the ice in East Antarctica. While most scientists explain these as natural geological formations, others remain unconvinced. The possibility of buried architecture cannot be excluded without excavation. Yet excavation on that scale is forbidden under the Antarctic Treaty. Thus, the anomalies remain locked in speculation, neither proven nor disproven. The discovery of fossilized remains of ancient life further complicates the picture. Petrified forests, dinosaur bones, and traces of once thriving ecosystems demonstrate that Antarctica was not always frozen. If prehistoric animals lived there, why not early humans? Archaeological sites in South America, such as Monteverde in Chile, show evidence of human presence over 14,000 years ago. This suggests that early populations had already migrated far south. From there, Antarctica would have been only a further journey across the Drake Passage. Difficult, yes, but not impossible for seafaring cultures with knowledge of currents and winds. Could some of them have reached the shores of a milder Antarctica? An unusual, off-topic event adds an eerie layer. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists drilling into subglacial lakes reported hearing unusual acoustic signals beneath the ice. Though later dismissed as equipment noise, rumours spread of mechanical sounds or unexplained vibrations far below the surface. To the speculative mind, such accounts suggested hidden machines or structures operating in secrecy. To scientists, they were reminders of how fragile instruments can be in extreme conditions. Regardless of interpretation, the story contributed to Antarctica's reputation as a place where ordinary data easily transforms into mystery. Historians remain divided. The mainstream view holds that there is no solid evidence of ancient human presence in Antarctica. No definitive artifacts, no indisputable structures, no inscriptions. Yet the geological record leaves open windows of possibility. During warm periods in the Pliocene or earlier interglacials, the continent would have been habitable. If humans or human ancestors reached it then, their traces might be buried deep below the ice, waiting for future discovery. Alternatively, rising seas and advancing glaciers may have erased them entirely, leaving only myths and anomalies as faint reminders. The debate also raises broader questions about human history. Conventional archaeology places the rise of civilization around 6,000 years ago, with early city-states in Mesopotamia and Egypt. But new discoveries continue to push back the timeline. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, built over 11,000 years ago, revealed monumental architecture far earlier than expected. If such a site could exist in Anatolia, why not an equally surprising site in Antarctica, buried beyond reach? The comparison is imperfect, but it demonstrates how fragile our timelines can be. Speculation aside, Antarctica remains one of the least explored places on Earth. Less than 0.5% of its surface has been studied directly. Vast areas remain untouched, concealed beneath ice thicker than the tallest skyscrapers. Even with modern technology, much of the continent is invisible, mapped only through indirect signals. In this sense, Antarctica is the perfect hiding place. Whether it conceals human traces, geological wonders, or nothing at all, it will continue to provoke curiosity until its secrets are revealed. The idea that Antarctica may have once hosted civilization sometimes collides with another enduring mystery: the origins of ancient Egypt. Across centuries, Egypt has been seen not only as a cradle of human culture, but also as a repository of forgotten wisdom. Its pyramids, temples, and astronomical alignments speak of a sophistication that still puzzles modern researchers. Could it be that Egypt preserved echoes of knowledge inherited from a land long vanished? perhaps even from a civilization buried beneath Antarctic ice. For centuries, Egyptian mythology has hinted at lands beyond the known world. In their cosmology, there was the concept of Zep Tepi, the first time, an era when gods walked the earth and brought order out of chaos. Some Egyptologists interpret this as symbolic myth, a poetic way of describing the dawn of civilization. Others suggest it may recall genuine memory of an earlier epoch, a precursor culture from which Egypt drew its wisdom. If Antarctica once flourished during a warmer period, could Zep Tepi be a distant remembrance of a land erased by catastrophe? The pyramids themselves invite speculation. Their alignment to celestial bodies, particularly Orion's belt, and the pole stars, demonstrates a deep understanding of astronomy. Scholars debate how such precision was achieved, given the tools available to Old Kingdom architects. To some, this reflects careful observation and calculation by skilled ancient astronomers. To others, it suggests inherited knowledge, passed down from an older source. The possibility that this knowledge originated in a civilization destroyed by sudden climatic change has fascinated alternative historians. They argue that Antarctica, before it froze, may have been the source. There are also curious connections between Egyptian traditions and tales of lands far to the south. Some texts describe journeys across the Great Green, the vast sea that bordered their world. Expeditions to Punt, a semi-mythical land rich in incense and gold, were recorded in Egyptian inscriptions. While mainstream historians identify Punt with regions in East Africa, some fringe theories speculate that the memory of voyages further afield, perhaps even southward, became merged into these stories. The idea remains controversial, but it underscores how Egyptian culture often carried memories of distant lands and ancestral journeys. Historians are still debating the origins of Egyptian architectural forms. The step pyramids, mastabas, and later smooth-sided pyramids represent a rapid development of monumental architecture. Was this evolution purely local, or did it draw on influences from elsewhere? The sudden emergence of large-scale stone building has parallels with Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site much older than Egypt, but similarly enigmatic. If advanced building techniques were preserved through oral tradition or migration, Antarctica could hypothetically be part of that chain of transmission. This is speculative, but it adds to the web of possibilities connecting Egypt to forgotten sources. There is also the peculiar case of the Sphinx. Its eroded body has sparked one of the most heated debates in archaeology. Some geologists argue that its weathering patterns resemble water erosion, suggesting that it predates the arid desert climate of Egypt and may be thousands of years older than conventionally believed. If true, this would place its construction closer to the end of the last ice age, when Earth's climate shifted dramatically. Such a timeline aligns curiously with theories that civilizations may have existed before the Great Freeze, perhaps in Antarctica, only to vanish as the world transformed. A strange off-topic episode illustrates how Egypt and Antarctica became linked in modern imagination. In the 1930s, explorers reported discovering mummified remains in the mountains of the Andes, preserved in ice. To some fringe theorists, this suggested that ancient peoples capable of high-altitude survival might also have reached Antarctica. The leap is tenuous, yet it reflects a recurring pattern. Egypt, the Andes, and Antarctica are often drawn together in theories of global civilization, bound by pyramids, alignments, and myths of sudden loss. The overlap between Egyptian myth and Antarctic speculation also appears in esoteric traditions. Some mystics claim that the knowledge of the pharaohs originated not in the Nile Valley, but in a southern land destroyed by catastrophe. According to these stories, survivors of that disaster migrated northward, carrying wisdom that later blossomed in Egypt. While mainstream scholars dismiss such claims as imaginative fiction, they reveal how enduring the idea of a southern source has been in human thought. The possibility of shared astronomical knowledge strengthens this speculation. Both Egyptian and Mayan civilizations, separated by oceans and millennia, aligned their monuments with celestial events. If such practices arose independently, they testify to a universal human fascination with the skies. But if they share a common root, it implies cultural transmission across vast distances. Could Antarctica, in a distant epoch, have served as an intermediary, or even an origin for such traditions? At its core, the Egypt-Antarctica connection challenges conventional chronology. Mainstream archaeology places the origins of Egyptian civilization around 5,000 years ago, with gradual development from earlier Neolithic communities. Yet the scale and precision of their achievements seem disproportionate to such a timeline. Some theorists argue that Egypt inherited fragments of a much older legacy, perhaps from an Ice Age civilization erased by cataclysm. Antarctica, fertile and habitable before its sudden freeze, offers a plausible candidate for that lost world, and yet evidence is elusive. No inscriptions in Egypt explicitly reference Antarctica. No artifacts have been traced directly to its frozen soil. What remains are parallels, coincidences, and the enduring allure of myths. Still, the possibility is tantalizing. If Egypt's extraordinary achievements were indeed influenced by a forgotten civilization, then the ice of Antarctica may be concealing not just geological history, but the roots of human culture itself. Civilizations, no matter how mighty, are fragile in the face of nature's fury. The story of Antarctica, if it once held a thriving culture, would inevitably end with catastrophe. For the continent to shift from fertile valleys and flowing rivers to an icy desert, something dramatic must have occurred. Theories abound: comet impacts, volcanic eruptions, pole shifts, or sudden climate collapse. Whatever the mechanism, the transformation was violent enough to bury a world beneath 3 miles of ice, erasing its surface from human memory. Geological evidence shows that Earth's climate can pivot with terrifying speed. During the Younger Dryas, roughly 12,900 years ago, the northern hemisphere plunged into an abrupt deep freeze. Ice cores reveal a dramatic cooling within mere decades, an eye blink in geological time. Historians are still debating whether this event was caused by a comet strike, shifts in ocean circulation, or other natural mechanisms. Whatever the trigger, it would have devastated ecosystems and erased cultures that depended on stable climates. If Antarctica was home to a society during this era, the sudden freeze could have been fatal. The pole shift hypothesis, though controversial, offers one explanation. Charles Hapgood, in the mid-20th century, proposed that Earth's outer crust could slip over its inner layers, displacing continents into new latitudes. In this model, Antarctica may once have been located further north, within temperate zones, before sliding into the polar circle in a catastrophic repositioning. Mainstream geologists remain skeptical, pointing out the stability of Earth's crust. Still, Hapgood's theory intrigued figures like Albert Einstein, who acknowledged that crustal displacement, while unlikely, was not impossible. If true, it would explain how Antarctica could change from lush to frozen in an instant, trapping whatever lived there in the grip of eternal ice. Volcanic activity is another possibility. Antarctica is riddled with volcanoes, many still active beneath its ice. Massive eruptions in the past may have filled the skies with ash, blocking sunlight and causing sudden cooling. Evidence of such eruptions appears in ice cores, where distinct layers of volcanic dust mark episodes of atmospheric upheaval. A single super eruption could have plunged the continent into a new climate regime, making survival impossible for any civilization unlucky enough to be present. Comet impact theories add another dimension. The Wilkes Land anomaly, a massive circular feature beneath East Antarctica, has been interpreted by some as the site of an ancient asteroid strike. If a cosmic body large enough struck the continent, it could have destabilized the climate globally, triggered massive floods, and accelerated the freezing of Antarctica itself. Advocates of this theory connect it to myths of a world-ending disaster preserved in cultures worldwide. To them, the fall of a celestial body is the missing link between science and legend. Strange events from human history are sometimes woven into these hypotheses. Around 10,800 BCE, coinciding with the onset of the Younger Dryas, many megafauna species suddenly disappeared: woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant sloths. Archaeologists argue over whether this was caused by human overhunting, climate change, or a sudden catastrophe. The synchronicity between extinctions and abrupt cooling suggests something extraordinary. Could this same event have entombed Antarctica's forests and any culture that thrived there? Flood myths, too, resonate in this context. Nearly every ancient civilization preserved stories of sudden deluge. Mesopotamian epics, biblical accounts, Greek legends, and Polynesian traditions. Rising sea levels at the end of the Ice Age would have drowned vast coastal areas, erasing settlements and forcing migrations. If Antarctica harboured a civilization, its destruction would not have been by flood, but by ice, a catastrophe equally absolute. Perhaps the flood myths are only one half of the story, with the other half buried at the bottom of the world. Historians are still debating whether myths can be taken as records of real events. Mainstream interpretations emphasize their symbolic nature. Yet, when combined with geological data, their resonance is difficult to dismiss. The memory of sudden destruction, encoded in story and ritual, might reflect the lived experience of ancestors facing the collapse of worlds. If Antarctica's demise was part of that collapse, its memory could linger in fragmented myths scattered across continents. A peculiar off-topic observation highlights how sudden climate shifts can erase entire ecosystems. In Siberia, frozen mammoths have been found with undigested food still in their stomachs, as if they were flash frozen in place. Some speculate this indicates a catastrophic temperature drop that killed them within hours. If such a freeze could strike Siberia, then perhaps Antarctica suffered a similar fate, its forests and rivers transformed almost overnight into frozen wastelands. The mammoths, silent in their icy graves, become grim parallels for what a human culture might endure under similar conditions. The question of cataclysm ties Antarctica to broader patterns of human history. Every known civilization bears scars of collapse. Drought ended the Akkadian Empire, earthquakes shattered Minoan Crete, volcanic eruptions buried Pompeii. If Antarctica was once home to the first civilization, its destruction would be the ultimate collapse, so complete that its ruins remain locked away, invisible, yet preserved beneath the weight of ice. Unlike other civilizations, erased but rediscovered, Antarctica's legacy remains hidden, its evidence tantalizingly out of reach. The story of cataclysm is therefore not just about science or myth. It is about the fragility of human achievement. Civilizations rise slowly, through generations of labour, only to vanish in moments when the Earth shifts. Antarctica reminds us of this truth. If it held the first culture on Earth, then its sudden burial is the greatest lesson in humility we could imagine. Even the mightiest achievements can be silenced by ice and time. For centuries, long before modern science began peeling back Antarctica's secrets, the continent existed as little more than a shadow on maps and a rumour whispered by sailors. The age of exploration brought with it both discovery and invention, as adventurers, merchants, and empires expanded their horizons across oceans. Within this era, Antarctica began to shift from mythical terra australis incognita, the unknown southern land, to a place explorers desperately sought, driven by promises of wealth, strategic advantage, or simple curiosity. The idea of terra australis had haunted maps since antiquity, but during the Renaissance it took on fresh life. Cartographers like Gerardus Mercator filled the bottom of their charts with vast imagined continents, decorated with mountains, forests, and speculative cities. These depictions were not based on evidence but on belief. If there was land in the north, there must be land in the south to balance it. explorers took these maps seriously, setting sail in search of riches hidden at the bottom of the world. Historians are still debating whether these voyages were spurred more by scientific curiosity or by imperial greed cloaked in scholarly justification. One of the first real expeditions into southern waters came in 1520, when Ferdinand Magellan's fleet rounded the tip of South America. From those icy seas, sailors glimpsed lands dotted with glaciers and storms so fierce that they believed themselves near the edge of the world. Though they never sighted Antarctica itself, their reports fueled speculation that a great continent lay just beyond the horizon. Later voyages by Francis Drake and others deepened the sense of mystery, confirming treacherous waters but leaving the southern land tantalizingly out of reach. By the 17th century, explorers like Abel Tasman and James Cook began to push further into southern latitudes. Tasman's journeys revealed New Zealand and Tasmania, islands that some believed were fragments of the great southern continent. Cook's voyages in the 1770s shattered many of these illusions. He sailed further south than anyone before him, skirting the Antarctic Circle and encountering endless fields of ice. While Cook never set foot on the continent, he concluded that if a southern land existed, it was inhospitable and barren. His verdict discouraged further exploration for decades, yet the mystery remained unresolved. Despite Cook's skepticism, rumours persisted. Whalers and sealers operating in the southern oceans occasionally reported glimpses of strange coastlines or lands covered in ice. Some of these accounts turned out to be sub-Antarctic islands, while others may have been mirages created by atmospheric distortions. But the persistence of these sightings kept alive the notion that something vast and unknown still waited in the south. The 19th century marked a turning point. In 1820, multiple expeditions, Russian, British and American, independently claimed the first official sighting of the Antarctic continent. The race to confirm its existence was on. Over the following decades, explorers like James Clark Ross mapped parts of the coastline, discovering landmarks such as the Ross Ice Shelf and the volcano Mount Erebus. These missions confirmed that Antarctica was real, immense, and formidable. Yet its interior remained sealed by ice, offering no hint of what lay beneath. To the public, the discovery of Antarctica blended science with legend. Newspapers and journals speculated about what resources might lie hidden beneath the ice. Some imagined fertile lands, others mineral wealth, and still others whispered of ruins from a forgotten age. The continent became a screen for projection, where fact and fantasy blurred together. Even sober scientists could not entirely resist the allure of imagining what the ice might conceal. One particularly strange episode occurred in 1838, during the United States exploring expedition led by Charles Wilkes. Sailors claimed to have seen vast mountain ranges along the coast, which later maps recorded as Wilkes Land. When later expeditions failed to find such features, historians debated whether the sailors had mistaken clouds and icebergs for mountains. Yet in the 20th century, radar imaging revealed genuine geological anomalies beneath Wilkes Land, reigniting speculation that the sailors had glimpsed more than they realized. This curious convergence of error and discovery highlights how Antarctica resists certainty, blending illusion with reality. For European empires, the age of exploration was not just about science, but also about control. A continent untouched by human habitation represented not only mystery, but potential domination. Maps drawn in the 18th and 19th centuries often carved Antarctica into imaginary territories, claimed in advance of any actual settlement. Britain, France, and later Germany and the United States all sought symbolic possession of the land, even as its ice rendered colonization impossible. In this way, Antarctica became part of the same imperial imagination that carved Africa, Asia, and the Americas into spheres of influence. Speculation about hidden civilizations occasionally accompanied these imperial ventures. The idea that Antarctica might be the site of Atlantis gained traction in fringe circles during the 19th century. writers pointed to the continent's size, isolation, and sudden burial in ice as evidence that it could match Plato's Lost Island. Though mainstream historians dismissed the connection, the association proved remarkably resilient. It resurfaced time and again, merging with new discoveries and lending the southern continent an air of forbidden history. By the late 19th century, exploration shifted towards science. Expeditions like those of Robert Falcon Scott and Ernest Shackleton sought to penetrate Antarctica's interior, racing toward the South Pole. These journeys revealed more about the continent's icy emptiness than its hidden past. Yet even as explorers froze, starved, and died on the ice, rumours persisted that beneath their feet lay something extraordinary. Shackleton himself speculated that the continent might conceal coal, minerals, or even oil, resources that could one day reshape global power. Others, less pragmatic, whispered of ruins, artifacts, and knowledge that might overturn history. An off-topic but illuminating example comes from the same era. In 1909, explorers in the Arctic reported finding strange meteorite fragments and anomalous fossils in Greenland's ice. Though unrelated, to Antarctica, these discoveries illustrated how polar regions often preserve the unexpected, serving as time capsules of deep history. If Greenland could yield such surprises, why not Antarctica, whose ice is thicker and older still? The comparison kept alive the possibility that the southern continent might be more than empty ice. Thus, the age of exploration set the stage. It transformed Antarctica from myth to reality, from blank space on maps to a land of ice and mystery. But it also layered the continent with stories, of sailors glimpsing mountains through fog, of cartographers sketching imagined coastlines, of empires carving claims into the unknown. All these stories reinforced a simple truth: Antarctica invites speculation. Even when explorers saw nothing but ice, they imagined what lay beneath. And it is in that imagination, as much as in geology or archaeology, that the possibility of a hidden civilization continues to survive. By the dawn of the 19th century, Antarctica had moved from a half-imagined continent on maps into a tangible reality that explorers could glimpse from the decks of their ships. Yet, seeing its frozen coasts was only the beginning. Once the continent's existence was confirmed, the world's powers began to compete for knowledge, prestige, and possession. The result was a scientific race to Antarctica, one that blended genuine curiosity with imperial ambition, producing both triumphs of discovery and new layers of mystery. The 19th century was an age of relentless exploration. Scientific societies in Europe, eager to map every corner of the globe, turned their attention south. In 1839, a French expedition led by Jules Dumont d'Urville claimed a portion of the continent for France, naming it Adélie Land. Around the same time, American explorer Charles Wilkes led his fleet into the Antarctic seas, producing maps that suggested a vast landmass rather than mere islands. Meanwhile, the British naval officer James Clark Ross undertook his own expedition, discovering the immense Ross Ice Shelf and two great volcanoes, Mount Erebus and Mount Terror. These expeditions collectively confirmed Antarctica as a continent, but they also sparked competition between nations, each eager to inscribe their flags on its icy surface. For these explorers, science and national pride were inseparable. Every new coastline mapped, every geological sample collected, was both a contribution to knowledge and a claim of ownership. The British Royal Society, the French Academy of Sciences, and the American scientific establishment all sought to be first in charting the southernmost frontiers. Behind the scientific veneer was a familiar story: empires carving their presence into unclaimed territory, each determined not to let rivals gain an advantage. The race intensified in the early 20th century with the so-called heroic age of Antarctic exploration. Robert Falcon Scott, Ernest Shackleton, and Roald Amundsen became names, etched into history, their journey's a mixture of scientific endeavour and epic survival. Amundsen's successful reach of the South Pole in 1911 marked a triumph for Norway, while Scott's ill-fated expedition, ending in death mere miles from a supply depot, became a symbol of tragic endurance. Shackleton's endurance expedition, trapped in ice and forced into a miraculous escape, remains one of the greatest survival stories ever told. These expeditions were not simply about exploration, they were about proving human endurance against the most hostile environment on Earth. And yet, amid the heroism and national competition, whispers of something deeper emerged. Stories circulated of strange discoveries, unusual formations glimpsed on the horizon, and artifacts found and quickly dismissed. Shackleton himself, while searching for coal deposits, reported unusual geological features that seemed inexplicable. Though explained as natural, some of these descriptions echoed with the kind of geometry enthusiasts later seized upon as evidence of lost structures. Whether imagination or misinterpretation, Antarctica's emptiness once again served as a canvas for human speculation. Historians are still debating how much of the heroic expeditions was driven by science and how much by empire. While expeditions carried geologists, biologists, and meteorologists, the geopolitical stakes were never far behind. Nations wanted to secure prestige, but they also wanted to know whether Antarctica held resources, minerals, coal, or oil that could fuel industrial might. In this sense, the scientific race was also an economic one. The frozen continent was imagined not only as a wilderness of ice, but also as a potential treasure chest locked beneath glaciers. The scientific instruments of the time were limited, yet they yielded surprising insights. Barometers, thermometers, and simple coring tools revealed how hostile the environment truly was, with temperatures plummeting far below anything known in the north. At the same time, fossils of ancient plants and evidence of past climates hinted that the continent had once been warm, forested, and alive. Such revelations unsettled neat narratives of Earth's geography, forcing scientists to reckon with deep time and shifting climates. If Antarctica could once host forests, then the line between present ice and past fertility became thinner than expected. One peculiar off-topic event illustrates the strange atmosphere of discovery. In 1909, during Shackleton's Nimrod expedition, the team discovered a colony of emperor penguins incubating eggs in the dead of winter. At the time, this seemed so improbable that it was considered one of the great biological mysteries. Later, scientists confirmed that emperor penguins are uniquely adapted to such conditions. But in 1909, the sight of life thriving in darkness and cold seemed almost supernatural. To some, it raised the question of what other forms of life, perhaps even human, might have once adapted to Antarctica's extremes. The scientific race also revealed Antarctica's capacity to conceal. Even as explorers mapped coastlines, the interior remained untouchable, shrouded in storms and ice. Expeditions that attempted to penetrate inland faced unimaginable hardships. Sledges broke, food supplies dwindled, frostbite ravaged crews. The sheer difficulty of exploration created gaps in knowledge where speculation could grow. For every mapped bay or sampled rock, there were hundreds of miles of untouched land that no one had ever seen. Into that void, imaginations projected ruins, cities, and civilizations buried deep beneath the snow. By the mid-20th century, the race to Antarctica was formalized into something larger. With the onset of the Cold War, the continent became a stage not only for science, but for strategic competition. Military operations like the US Navy's Operation High Jump in 1946 sent vast fleets into Antarctic waters, ostensibly for research, but also for training in polar warfare. The scale of these missions, ships, planes, thousands of men, sparked rumours of hidden discoveries, secret bases, and suppressed knowledge. Official reports spoke only of scientific goals, but the secrecy and scale-fed speculation that Antarctica's mysteries were too great to be shared openly. The scientific race, then, was never only about science. It was about prestige, empire, resources, and perhaps secrets. While mainstream history records the achievements of explorers and the growth of knowledge, an undercurrent of speculation has always persisted. That among the ice and storms, something extraordinary was glimpsed, then hidden, waiting for another age to uncover. By the mid-20th century, after centuries of speculation and decades of perilous expeditions, Antarctica had finally been confirmed as the last great continent. Its coastlines were mapped, its mountains named, and its ice measured. Yet strangely, as knowledge grew, so did silence. For the first time in human history, an entire landmass was deliberately shielded from settlement, colonization, and exploitation. This silence, codified in law, became both a triumph of international cooperation and a fertile ground for rumours of secrecy. The turning point came in 1959 with the signing of the Antarctic Treaty. At the height of the Cold War, when the world was split into hostile blocs, 12 nations agreed to freeze all territorial claims and dedicate Antarctica solely to peaceful scientific research. No military bases, no nuclear testing, no mining or resource extraction. This extraordinary agreement was unprecedented, a rare moment when rival nations set aside competition. For scientists, it was a victory. Antarctica would be a continent of knowledge rather than conquest. For the public, however, the treaty's restrictions raised suspicion. Why lock away an entire continent? What exactly was being protected? Historians are still debating the motivations behind the Antarctic Treaty. Was it a pragmatic response to the impossibility of colonizing such a hostile land? Or was it a way to prevent conflict over hidden resources? Some even suggest that the treaty masked discoveries too shocking to be revealed. Artifacts, ruins, or evidence of a civilization buried beneath the ice. While mainstream historians dismiss this as conspiracy, the secrecy surrounding military expeditions like Operation High Jump fueled the idea that Antarctica was not merely empty ice. The Great Silence was not only political but physical. The sheer scale of the continent and the difficulty of access meant that large regions remained entirely unexplored. Even today, satellites provide only partial clarity. Subglacial lakes, valleys, and mountains remain invisible to the human eye. What lies beneath 3 miles of ice can only be guessed at through indirect measurements. This absence of evidence is fertile ground for imagination. In the silence, myths take root. One of the most intriguing aspects of this silence is the limit on excavation. Under the treaty, drilling and excavation are heavily regulated to protect the environment. Large-scale archaeological digs are impossible. Thus, even if ruins or artifacts did exist beneath the ice, international law would prevent their discovery. For theorists who suspect a cover-up, this restriction is proof enough. The world's powers have agreed to silence. For scientists, it is a necessary safeguard to preserve a fragile ecosystem. The truth, perhaps, is a mixture of both. Secrecy during the Cold War only deepened the mystery. Both the United States and the Soviet Union conducted large-scale operations in Antarctica under the guise of research. The presence of military equipment and personnel, along with restricted access to certain zones, suggested to outsiders that more was happening than was admitted. Declassified documents later revealed the strategic value of polar training and the potential interest in natural resources. Yet, to those already convinced of hidden civilizations, such secrecy appeared as confirmation. Even today, Antarctica is one of the least photographed and least visited places on Earth. Tourists are confined to a few coastal areas. Scientists operate in scattered stations, focused on narrow fields of research. Vast regions remain untouched, without even a footprint to mark them. This absence of human presence reinforces the silence. There is no one to verify or dismiss the anomalies reported in satellite imagery, no one to follow up on rumours of structures or artefacts glimpsed beneath the ice. A strange off-topic event illustrates how silence breeds speculation. In 2001, a team of researchers drilling into a subglacial lake in Antarctica reported unusual microbial life forms unlike any seen before. Though later studies suggested contamination, rumours spread rapidly of organisms surviving untouched for millions of years. For those already primed to believe in hidden civilizations, the leap was easy. If microbes could survive in isolation, why not traces of human activity? The silence of Antarctica meant such questions lingered, unanswered. The Antarctic Treaty remains in effect today, renewed and expanded by dozens of nations. Its success is often praised as a model of peaceful cooperation. Yet, its very success ensures that Antarctica will remain veiled. Large-scale excavation, mining, or exploration of the interior is prohibited. Whatever lies beneath will remain hidden, by law as much as by ice. And so, Antarctica has become not only a physical silence but a cultural one. Scientists speak cautiously, bound by data and regulation. Governments speak rarely, bound by treaties and secrecy. In this void, the public imagination thrives, weaving stories of lost civilizations, alien bases, and forbidden discoveries. Whether such stories are true or not matters less than the fact that they persist, fed by silence. If Antarctica does conceal the remains of the first civilization, then humanity has chosen, consciously or not to uncover it. Instead, the continent lies untouched, its secrets preserved by law, by ice, and by silence. Perhaps this is a triumph of wisdom, protecting a fragile environment. Or perhaps it is a tragedy, leaving a buried history forever unknown. The silence surrounding Antarctica has not stopped speculation, it has amplified it. If a civilization once existed beneath the ice, theorists argue, then it may not only have survived but thrived, developing technologies far beyond what we associate with early humanity. Such claims inhabit the blurred space between archaeology, myth, and science fiction. Yet they persist because they offer explanations for anomalies that history alone cannot neatly contain. The question is not simply whether Antarctica once held people, but whether those people were custodians of knowledge and technology that vanished with the ice. The idea of ancient advanced technology often begins with architecture. Around the world, megalithic structures, massive stone monuments, stand as testaments to early ingenuity. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Stonehenge, and the colossal stones of Baalbek defy easy explanation with primitive tools. Mainstream archaeology attributes these to extraordinary human effort, skill, and organization. Alternative theories, however, suggest they represent knowledge inherited from a far older source. If such a source existed, Antarctica provides a plausible candidate. A civilization flourishing in a warmer epoch might have mastered techniques later preserved and adapted by survivors who migrated northward. Historians are still debating how early humans achieved feats of navigation and construction that seem disproportionate to their tools. The Polynesians navigated the Pacific without compasses, guided by stars and ocean swells. The builders of Göbekli Tepe, 11,000 years ago, carved monumental pillars long before agriculture or writing. If these accomplishments reflect forgotten knowledge, Antarctica might once have been a centre from which such wisdom radiated outward. Some even argue that the maps showing ice-free coastlines are themselves a form of technology, evidence of cartographic methods lost to history. Energy is another area where speculation thrives. Ancient myths often describe mysterious sources of power. In Egyptian temples, carvings interpreted as light bulbs suggest illumination without fire. Indian texts speak of flying machines powered by unknown forces. To fringe theorists, these are not metaphors but memories of advanced technology, fragments of a civilization erased by catastrophe. Antarctica, isolated and geologically active, may have provided a unique environment for experimentation with geothermal energy or even more exotic sources. The presence of volcanic hotspots beneath its ice today adds fuel to the idea that natural power was once harnessed there. One particularly controversial hypothesis suggests that Antarctica may have housed global centres for astronomy. Its clear southern skies and proximity to the celestial pole would have offered a unique vantage for observing the stars. If ancient builders aligned monuments worldwide to celestial bodies, as in Egypt and Mesoamerica, perhaps those practices originated in Antarctica observatories now buried under ice. While mainstream historians argue such alignments arose independently, the possibility of a shared origin continues to attract speculation. Off-topic but illuminating is the discovery of the Antikythera mechanism in Greece, a 2,000-year-old device that functioned as an astronomical computer. Its existence demonstrates that advanced technology can appear, vanish, and be forgotten, only to resurface centuries later. If such sophistication could be lost in recorded history, how much more might be erased in prehistory? Antarctica, sealed under ice, could be hiding inventions of equal or greater sophistication, preserved in ruins we have yet to uncover. Some theorists go further, suggesting that Antarctica was once part of a global network of civilizations. They point to similarities in pyramid construction across Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Asia, arguing for a shared technological origin. If Antarctica held a civilization capable of influencing distant lands, then it may have served as the hub of this network. Trade, migration, or even cultural exchange could explain parallels that mainstream archaeology struggles to attribute to coincidence alone. Historians remain cautious. Most argue that there is no evidence of advanced technology in prehistory beyond what human societies could achieve with ingenuity and persistence. They point out that extraordinary effort, not extraordinary machines, built the pyramids. Yet even within mainstream scholarship, surprises continue to emerge. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe pushed back monumental architecture by millennia. The sophistication of Paleolithic art, navigation, and social organization continues to challenge assumptions about primitive humanity. If our ancestors were more capable than previously believed, then imagining them experimenting with technology in unexpected places, including Antarctica, is not entirely unreasonable. One peculiar anecdote often cited in fringe discussions comes from Operation High Jump in 1946. Some reports claim that US Navy pilots observed strange craft, disc-shaped objects moving at extraordinary speed near the Antarctic coast. Official records attribute such stories to rumour and Cold War paranoia, but for theorists, they suggest remnants of advanced technology hidden in the ice. Whether interpreted as alien or human, the association with Antarctica reinforces its image as a vault of secrets. Even without such dramatic claims, Antarctica's geology provides possibilities. Subglacial lakes like Vostok may preserve not only unique ecosystems, but also evidence of human or artificial intervention. An advanced culture might have built beneath the ice, using geothermal heat and subterranean structures for shelter. Radar anomalies interpreted as artificial grids or rectangular features could be remnants of such constructions, though mainstream science attributes them to natural processes. The silence of Antarctica prevents resolution. Without excavation, hypotheses remain suspended between possibility and impossibility. Ultimately, the notion of ancient technology in Antarctica challenges our definition of civilization. If we limit civilization to writing, cities, and agriculture, then Antarctica seems implausible. But if we broaden it to include organized societies capable of navigation, construction, and innovation, then the idea gains traction. A culture thriving in a warm Antarctica could have developed technologies suited to its environment, technologies that, when buried beneath ice, vanished without a trace. The question lingers: Was humanity's first experiment with complex society lost in Antarctica's freeze, its tools and knowledge entombed beyond reach? Or are we simply projecting our fascination with lost technology onto a continent whose silence invites invention? For now, the ice guards its answer, leaving us with this tantalizing paradox. The more Antarctica resists discovery, the more its hidden technology, real or imagined, seems plausible. As the 20th century unfolded, Antarctica's enigma deepened with the spread of modern technologies, satellites, aerial photography, and ground-penetrating radar. Each new tool sharpened our view of the continent, yet paradoxically also multiplied its mysteries. Claims of controversial discoveries began to ripple beyond academic journals into popular imagination, and Antarctica became a magnet for both sober scientific speculation and unrestrained fantasy. Among these claims, a few stand out as persistent, unsettling, and unresolved. One of the most widely circulated is the report of pyramidal mountains captured in satellite imagery. The sharp, triangular peaks rising from the Antarctic plateau bear uncanny resemblance to man-made pyramids. To geologists, these are nunataks, natural mountains protruding through the ice, sculpted by wind and glacial erosion. Yet to others, their symmetry seems too perfect to dismiss. The comparison with Egyptian pyramids has become irresistible, and images of Antarctica's pyramids continue to spark debate online and in alternative research circles. Historians are still debating whether this resemblance is a coincidence of geology or evidence of something constructed long ago. Another controversial case centers on radar anomalies beneath the ice. In the 1990s, scientific teams conducting surveys in East Antarctica detected vast rectangular formations buried under miles of glacial cover. The data showed patterns suggestive of straight lines and grid-like structures, highly unusual in natural geology. While most researchers interpreted these anomalies as the result of fault lines or ice dynamics, others proposed the possibility of artificial architecture. Without excavation, the question remains unresolved, feeding speculation that these might be remnants of a civilization erased by ice. Operation High Jump, a US Navy mission in 1946-47, has also become a lightning rod for speculation. Officially, the operation was a large-scale exercise in polar training, involving 4,700 men, ships, and aircraft. Its goals included establishing bases and testing equipment in extreme conditions. Yet the mission ended abruptly after only a few months, sparking rumours that something extraordinary was encountered. In later decades, stories emerged that pilots reported strange craft moving at impossible speeds above the Antarctic skies. Though unverified, these accounts have become part of Antarctica's mythology, cited as evidence of either hidden advanced technology or contact with something beyond human history. A more recent controversy erupted in 2012 when reports circulated of vast domed structures beneath the Antarctic ice, supposedly detected by satellite. Images circulating online showed circular patterns suggestive of massive buried installations. Scientists dismissed them as natural formations, ice domes shaped by geothermal heat and glacial flow. Yet for many, the resemblance to artificial structures was too strong to ignore. The idea of hidden bases, either ancient or modern, remains one of Antarctica's most persistent conspiracy theories. Beyond technology and anomalies, there are also strange reports of biological discoveries. In 2013, Russian scientists drilling into Lake Vostok announced the recovery of unusual DNA sequences, unlike any known organisms. Although subsequent analysis attributed this to contamination, the story fed speculation of undiscovered life forms preserved beneath the ice. For some, this raised the tantalizing possibility that not only microbes, but perhaps traces of more complex life, or even human remains, could exist in such untouched environments. The silence around the true results of these studies only deepened suspicion. A peculiar off-topic event highlights how fragile evidence can be in extreme conditions. In 1965, a group of British scientists working at Halley Station reported finding metallic fragments embedded in glacial ice. Later analysis identified them as remnants of a meteorite. Yet at the time, rumours spread that the fragments were artificial, part of a machine long buried in the ice. The explanation was mundane, but the initial story demonstrated how quickly anomalies in Antarctica transform into extraordinary claims. Controversial discoveries extend beyond science into geopolitics. During the Cold War, both Soviet and American forces established bases deep in Antarctica, often restricting access to surrounding regions. Satellite imagery occasionally revealed unusual structures, grids of tunnels, storage facilities, and airstrips, quickly explained as logistical necessities. But secrecy bred suspicion. To those convinced of hidden truths, these bases were interpreted as attempts to access or conceal ancient ruins beneath the ice. Perhaps the most provocative theory ties these discoveries together with myths of Atlantis. If Plato's description of a lost civilization destroyed by sudden catastrophe is viewed through the lens of Antarctica, then pyramidal mountains, radar anomalies, and unexplained DNA sequences become fragments of a coherent story. Advocates argue that Atlantis was not a sunken island, but a frozen continent. The sudden burial of a civilization beneath ice, they claim, would match both myth and evidence. Mainstream historians reject this interpretation, but it remains one of the most popular narratives in speculative history. The persistence of controversial discoveries reflects a deeper truth. Antarctica's inaccessibility makes certainty impossible. A pyramid-like mountain can be explained as geology, but until excavated it will always retain an aura of possibility. A radar anomaly can be dismissed as natural, but the very act of concealment within miles of ice fuels the imagination. Antarctica functions as a mirror for human hopes and fears, the ultimate unknown, capable of holding anything from lost civilizations to alien technology. And so, the continent's greatest discoveries may be those not yet confirmed. Beneath its silence lie questions too vast to ignore. Is Antarctica truly a blank wilderness, or is it the tomb of humanity's forgotten first chapter? Until the ice yields its secrets, every anomaly, pyramids, grids, strange DNA, remains not just controversial, but profoundly unsettling. The ice of Antarctica is more than a frozen barrier. It is an archive, a layered book of time in which each page is a year, and each chapter a climate epoch. To scientists, ice cores drilled from the continent are among the most precious records on Earth. They preserve within them the history of our atmosphere, the rhythms of ancient climates, and the fingerprints of sudden disasters. For those who speculate about lost civilizations, ice cores carry another implication. They may hold indirect evidence of worlds that flourished before the freeze. Drilling projects such as those at Vostok Station, Dome C, and the West Antarctic ice sheet have retrieved cores stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. These cylinders of compressed snow contain bubbles of ancient air, tiny fossils of pollen, volcanic ash, and chemical traces that reveal how Earth has changed. From them, scientists have reconstructed cycles of warming and cooling, fluctuations in carbon dioxide, and the onset of ice ages. The record is astonishingly precise, down to single years in some layers, and demonstrates how dramatically Earth's climate can shift. One of the most striking revelations from Antarctic ice is the suddenness of change. Around 12,900 years ago, the onset of the Younger Dryas cooling appears as a sharp line in the record, a plunge in temperature that reshaped ecosystems worldwide. Historians are still debating whether this was caused by a comet impact, a massive outburst of glacial meltwater, or shifts in ocean currents. To some, it is exactly the kind of event that could erase an advanced culture almost overnight. If a civilization once thrived in Antarctica's temperate valleys, its world may have ended in that abrupt descent into ice. the cores also capture evidence of cataclysms that resonate with myth. Layers rich in volcanic ash point to immense eruptions that darken skies. Spikes in extraterrestrial dust suggest impacts from space. Each of these events would have altered the climate, disrupted food chains, and forced migrations. Around the world, myths of sudden destruction, floods, fires, freezes, may echo these geological upheavals. If Antarctica harboured human settlements, the ice cores provide the scientific record of their destruction, even if no artifacts remain. Beyond cataclysm, the cores hint at fertility. Chemical signatures of ancient vegetation, including pollen from trees and grasses, confirm that Antarctica was once green. Some cores even contain traces of marine organisms blown inland, suggesting a warmer climate with open water along the coasts. For those who imagine a civilization there, this is essential proof. Antarctica was not always uninhabitable. At times, it was a land of rivers and forests, capable of supporting life. Curiously, anomalies occasionally appear in the cores. Unexplained spikes in methane, abrupt shifts in temperature, and traces of compounds not easily attributed to natural processes spark debate. Mainstream scientists interpret these as the result of volcanic eruptions or unusual climatic events. But others wonder, could some be signs of human activity, preserved as chemical ghosts beneath the ice? A civilization burning, forests farming or using fuels might have left atmospheric traces. Without direct artifacts, such evidence would be subtle, but ice cores are sensitive enough to capture it. A strange off-topic case illustrates this possibility. In Greenland ice cores, scientists have detected traces of lead pollution dating back to Roman times, evidence of ancient smelting that drifted across oceans and settled into polar ice. If Roman industry could leave its mark so far afield, then any Antarctic civilization might have done the same. The precedent is clear. Human activity can be preserved in ice for thousands of years. Whether Antarctica contains such traces remains an open question. The role of ice cores extends beyond climate into the question of time. They allow us to peer not just thousands, but hundreds of thousands of years into the past. This challenges conventional chronologies of civilization, which place the rise of complex society only in the last 6,000 years. If evidence of human activity were ever found in deeper layers, it would overturn everything we know about history. To many, this possibility is remote. Yet the fact that ice cores even allow the question to be asked demonstrates their power to unsettle our assumptions. Historians are still debating how far back human exploration may have reached. If seafaring cultures ventured south during warmer periods, their presence could be faintly preserved in the atmosphere, captured as subtle chemical traces. The ice cores may hold these signatures, waiting for someone to look. The technology to detect minute anomalies improves each decade, making it possible that one day, what now seems speculation may become evidence. The cores also remind us of the fragility of civilizations. The record shows cycles of warming and cooling far beyond human control. Civilizations today may feel secure, but the ice warns otherwise. Climates shift, often suddenly, and entire ecosystems can vanish in decades. If an Antarctic culture once thrived, its fate is not just a mystery, but a warning, inscribed in frozen layers for all time. Thus, the role of ice cores is double. To science, they are a precise record of Earth's past climates. To speculation, they are the archive of forgotten worlds, storing invisible whispers of civilizations erased by ice. Each layer is a message, not only from nature, but perhaps from humanity itself, long before our present memory began. If stones and ice preserve landscapes, then DNA preserves memory and flesh. For decades, genetic studies have illuminated the story of human migration across the globe, tracing lines of descent from Africa into Europe, Asia, Oceania, and the Americas. Yet when the discussion turns to Antarctica, the southernmost continent appears absent from the human record. No fossils, no skeletal remains, no clear evidence of habitation. Still, some researchers have asked, could genetic clues in living populations point indirectly to an Antarctic connection? Might fragments of human lineage carry echoes of journeys further south than history records? The story begins with migration. Archaeological evidence shows that humans reached South America at least 14,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. From there, cultures adapted to the Andes, the Amazon, and the windswept coasts of Patagonia. The seafaring traditions of early South American peoples remain less studied than those of Polynesia, yet coastal cultures would have had access to rich marine resources and the skills to build boats capable of long voyages. If humans reached the tip of South America, could some have sailed further still, toward a then warmer Antarctica? Historians are still debating whether such journeys were feasible, but DNA might one day provide answers where archaeology cannot. Modern genetics reveal surprising connections across oceans. Studies of Polynesian DNA show traces of contact with South America long before European arrival, suggesting voyages spanning thousands of miles. Similarly, South American lineages contain hints of ancient input from Pacific peoples. If such improbable journeys occurred, then the gap between South America and Antarctica, a fraction of that distance, seems less impossible. If even a small group ventured south, their genetic legacy could persist in the mitochondrial DNA of modern populations. One intriguing discovery comes from research on the Yagan people of Tierra del Fuego, at the southernmost tip of South America. Their adaptations to cold maritime conditions, insulating physiology, high metabolic rates, and remarkable seamanship suggest a deep history of survival in harsh environments. While no evidence directly links them to Antarctica, some anthropologists speculate that their ancestors may have explored or at least sighted the continent during warmer periods. If so, fragments of their DNA could carry a memory of Antarctica, hidden not in ruins but in chromosomes. Elsewhere, traces of enigmatic ancestry appear in native South American populations. Some studies show genetic signatures not easily explained by known migration routes, raising questions about forgotten lineages. While mainstream science attributes these to complex pre-Columbian interactions, alternative interpretations suggest that unrecorded contacts, perhaps even with peoples displaced from southern regions, might be involved. Though speculative, the possibility adds another layer to the mystery of Antarctica's role in human prehistory. DNA evidence also intersects with myths. Polynesian traditions of distant southern lands, Andean legends of gods arriving from across the sea, and even Greek tales of Terra Australis suggest memories of contact beyond known routes. If such journeys occurred, however rare, their legacy might survive only in genes. Modern genetic mapping is sensitive enough to detect faint signals of ancient admixture, raising the possibility that Antarctica's human history, if it existed, might be written not in stones or ice, but in living bloodlines. A curious off-topic example demonstrates how genetics can reveal forgotten journeys. In 2007, scientists discovered that chickens in South America carried a genetic marker found only in Polynesian populations, suggesting pre-Columbian contact across the Pacific. For centuries, historians doubted such contact was possible, but DNA proved otherwise. This shows how genetic evidence can confirm improbable voyages once dismissed as myth. If Polynesians reached South America, why not South Americans or their ancestors reaching Antarctica, leaving behind faint genetic signatures waiting to be uncovered? There is also the question of non-human DNA. Antarctica's fossil record contains evidence of forests, dinosaurs, and ancient amphibians. More recently, ice cores and subglacial lakes have yielded microbes preserved for millions of years. Some geneticists argue that these microbial lineages may hold secrets about ancient climates, migrations, or even human contact. For example, if unusual human-associated microbes were ever found deep beneath the ice, they could suggest past habitation. Though such findings remain unconfirmed, The prospect is tantalizing. Life itself may testify where ruins remain hidden. Historians are still debating how far humans ranged during the last ice age. While conventional wisdom limits their expansion to Africa, Eurasia, Oceania, and the Americas, new archaeological sites continually push back dates and expand ranges. If people reached Australia by sea 50,000 years ago, if they crossed into the Americas by 15,000 years ago, then reaching a habitable Antarctica during warm intervals does not seem beyond possibility. Genetic evidence could be the missing bridge, pointing to contacts unrecorded in stone. One strange observation adds to the puzzle. In 2010, a genetic study suggested a mysterious ghost population contributed DNA to Native Americans, with no clear origin. Some scientists propose an early migration from Asia. Others argue for unrecognized local diversity. To alternative theorists, this ghost population could reflect a lineage displaced from Antarctica or nearby regions during catastrophic climate change. Though speculative, it underscores how much remains unknown in the story of human movement. The connection between DNA and Antarctica is not yet proven, but the potential is immense. As genetic mapping improves, faint traces of forgotten peoples may surface, challenging established chronologies. If any lineage once touched Antarctica, however briefly, it may still whisper through the genomes of their descendants. The continent itself may remain silent, but the living world could carry its memory forward, encoded in the deepest strands of human inheritance. When speculation about Antarctica reaches its most extreme edges, two competing possibilities emerge. One is entirely human, that a forgotten civilization, perhaps the first complex culture on Earth, flourished on the continent during a warm epoch before being destroyed by ice. The other is more radical, that the continent was once home to something not entirely human at all, an extraterrestrial presence, an ancient visitor whose technology or influence became interwoven with early humanity. Both ideas persist, not because of proof, but because of Antarctica's silence, which seems to invite narratives too vast to ignore. The extraterrestrial hypothesis often begins with anomalies. Radar scans detecting geometric shapes beneath the ice, pyramid-like peaks rising above glaciers, or unexplained metallic fragments have been interpreted as signs of alien structures. Advocates point to Operation High Jump and later military secrecy as evidence of hidden contact, claiming governments suppressed knowledge of advanced craft found under Antarctic ice. While mainstream historians dismiss such ideas as conspiracy theories, the persistence of these claims reveals how Antarctica's inaccessibility fuels the imagination. The absence of evidence becomes, paradoxically, a form of evidence in itself. Human-centered explanations, by contrast, focus on continuity. They argue that Antarctica was not an alien outpost but a cradle of early culture, a place where human ingenuity first experimented with architecture, navigation, and astronomy. In this view, myths of gods descending from the sky or arriving from the sea are symbolic memories of migrations from Antarctica after catastrophe. Survivors may have carried fragments of knowledge northward, seeding the growth of civilizations in Egypt, Mesopotamia, and beyond. To proponents, this theory preserves human agency, while still explaining anomalies in maps, myths, and monuments. Historians are still debating how myths of divine origin should be interpreted. Were gods literal beings, perhaps advanced humans or visitors from beyond Earth? Or were they metaphors for ancestors, teachers, or natural forces? The Egyptian Zep Tepi, the Sumerian Anunnaki, the Incan Viracocha, all describe beings who came from elsewhere, bringing knowledge. For some, these stories confirm alien involvement. For others, they point to displaced peoples, migrating from lands now lost, perhaps even Antarctica itself. The alien hypothesis is not without precedent in cultural imagination. In the mid-20th century, Authors such as Erich von Däniken popularized the idea of ancient astronauts, arguing that humanity's sudden leaps in technology were sparked by extraterrestrial guidance. The monumental architecture of Egypt, Mesoamerica, and Asia was presented as evidence of contact with beings possessing superior knowledge. Critics highlight flaws in this reasoning, noting that human societies are fully capable of such achievements. Yet the theory persists, particularly when combined with Antarctica's secrecy. If alien technology were ever discovered, Antarctica, remote, inhospitable, and tightly controlled, would be an ideal place to conceal it. An unusual off-topic episode adds a curious twist. In 1982, a Soviet research team near Lake Vostok reported unusual magnetic anomalies beneath the ice. While officially explained as geological, rumours spread that massive metallic structures lay buried there. Some theorists claimed this was evidence of alien bases or ancient machinery. To scientists, it was another reminder of Antarctica's complex geology. Yet the persistence of the story demonstrates how quickly unexplained data morphs into narratives of otherworldly involvement. Human-centered theories, however, may offer a subtler explanation. If Antarctica once supported a thriving human culture, it could explain myths of lost lands and gods without invoking extraterrestrials. Survivors, forced northward by catastrophe, may have appeared to other cultures as outsiders with unusual knowledge. Farmers, builders, or astronomers far more advanced than local populations. Over generations, memory of these people could have transformed into myths of divine beings. In this view, the aliens of legend may have been humans from Antarctica, carrying the legacy of a civilization erased by ice. The debate between alien and human origins reflects deeper tensions in how history is told. The alien hypothesis removes responsibility from humanity, attributing our achievements to outside intervention. The human hypothesis, though equally speculative, emphasizes resilience and continuity, that our ancestors, given time and opportunity, were capable of greatness even in places we now consider uninhabitable. Both interpretations spring from the same soil, the mysteries left unanswered by Antarctica's silence. Historians remain cautious. No artifacts, no inscriptions, no verifiable evidence connects Antarctica with either human civilization or alien presence. Yet the persistence of speculation shows how deeply people yearn for explanations beyond the ordinary. A frozen continent larger than Europe, locked away by law and nature, is the perfect vessel for those yearnings. Whether as Atlantis reborn or as an extraterrestrial vault, Antarctica provides a canvas vast enough for both skepticism and wonder. In the end, the question may be less about what Antarctica conceals, and more about what humanity projects onto it. To some, it is the lost homeland of gods. To others, the birthplace of civilization. To others still, the ultimate outpost of alien contact. Each theory reflects the same human impulse, to fill silence with story, to turn absence into meaning. And so Antarctica remains, a place where human roots and alien mysteries intertwine, waiting for the ice to yield its secrets. If the whispers of hidden civilizations and alien influence were not enough, the 20th century layered Antarctica with another dimension of intrigue, war and conspiracy. At a time when global powers were locked in military competition, Antarctica, remote, hostile, and officially devoted to peace, became a canvas for some of the most persistent rumours in modern history. Military expeditions, sudden secrecy, and Cold War paranoia all combined to create the impression that something extraordinary lay hidden beneath the ice, something worth guarding at all costs. The most famous of these episodes is Operation High Jump, launched by the United States Navy in 1946-47. Officially, it was described as a massive training exercise, designed to test equipment and personnel in polar conditions. Yet the scale of the mission was extraordinary. Over 4,000 men, 13 ships, and dozens of aircraft were deployed to Antarctica. Led by Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the operation mapped thousands of miles of coastline, gathered scientific data, and established temporary bases. But it ended abruptly after only a few months, far sooner than planned. The early termination of Operation Highjump fueled rumours almost immediately. Some speculated that the fleet had encountered hostile forces, strange aircraft, or advanced technology buried beneath the ice. Stories circulated of pilots reporting disc-shaped craft moving at impossible speeds, outmaneuvering US planes. Though unverified, these accounts became woven into the lore of Antarctica, cited as evidence of either hidden human technology or something non-human. Historians are still debating whether these rumours arose from misinterpretations, deliberate disinformation, or genuine anomalies. The Nazi connection added another layer of intrigue. In the late 1930s, Germany launched the New Swabia expedition, sending a ship to survey parts of Antarctica and lay symbolic territorial claims. After World War II, rumours spread that the Nazis had established secret bases beneath the ice, perhaps even housing advanced weapons or remnants of a lost civilization. Some theories went further, suggesting that Operation Highjump was launched specifically to locate and neutralize these bases. While mainstream history records little beyond basic exploration, the myth of a Nazi-Antarctic connection endures, fed by wartime secrecy and post-war paranoia. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union maintained scientific stations in Antarctica. Officially, these were devoted to research, but their presence in such inhospitable conditions raised suspicions. Military equipment was often present, communications were restricted, and movements were monitored. For those inclined to suspicion, this looked less like science and more like surveillance of something hidden. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959, while celebrated as a triumph of peace, also intensified conspiracy theories. By prohibiting military activity and restricting access, it appeared to some as a global pact of silence, ensuring that whatever secrets lay beneath the ice would remain concealed. A peculiar off-topic example highlights how easily Antarctic discoveries could slip into conspiracy. In 1973, a US satellite detected an unusual double flash of light near the Prince Edward Islands, close to the Antarctic Circle. Dubbed the Vela incident, it was widely suspected to be a nuclear test conducted by South Africa or Israel. Yet some fringe accounts suggested it was connected to hidden technology in Antarctica, perhaps even a weapon unearthed from beneath the ice. The official explanation remains inconclusive, and the ambiguity only deepened Antarctica's reputation as a place where truth and secrecy collide. Legends of underground caverns further enrich the tapestry of conspiracy. Reports from early explorers and whalers sometimes described unusual warm pockets, where geothermal activity created ice-free valleys. In the modern era, satellite images have revealed such oases, areas where volcanic heat maintains liquid lakes beneath the ice. To scientists, these are fascinating natural laboratories. To theorists, they are the perfect hiding places for secret bases, whether ancient or modern. The idea that governments or militaries might be concealing discoveries in these hidden valleys has become a staple of Antarctic lore. Historians are still debating the extent to which conspiracy theories distort genuine history. There is no evidence that Operation Highjump engaged in combat with flying discs, nor that Nazi bases survived beneath the ice. Yet the persistence of these stories demonstrates how Antarctica's remoteness makes it fertile ground for speculation. A continent locked away by treaties, where only scientists and military personnel have access, naturally invites suspicion. The less the world is allowed to know, the more it imagines, and yet not all is imagination. Military interest in Antarctica has always been real. Strategic considerations, air routes, communications, and the possibility of untapped resources ensured that no superpower could ignore the continent entirely. Secrecy was often a matter of national security, not hidden civilizations. But secrecy is fertile soil, and in that soil, extraordinary narratives take root. Antarctica, therefore, occupies a unique position in the human imagination. It is both the most peaceful continent, dedicated to science and the most suspicious, shrouded in military history and Cold War politics. It is both a place of data and a place of rumour, where every radar anomaly becomes a buried ruin, every sudden withdrawal an encounter with the unknown. Whether or not Antarctica hides a lost civilization, it certainly hides something equally powerful: the truth of how little we know and how much we fear not knowing. As the 21st century unfolded, Antarctica began to yield its secrets, not through legend or rumour, but through the steady advance of science. Satellites, radar systems, and deep drilling technologies have pulled back the veil of ice, revealing landscapes and ecosystems unseen for millions of years. Yet, paradoxically, each revelation has also deepened the mystery. For those who dream of lost civilizations beneath the ice, the discoveries of recent decades offer tantalizing clues that blur the line between established science and speculative wonder. One of the most significant breakthroughs came from ice-penetrating radar. These surveys revealed entire mountain ranges buried beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet, including the Gamburtsev Mountains, as large and rugged as the European Alps. Their very existence is puzzling. Geological models suggest such mountains should have eroded away long ago, yet here they are, preserved in pristine form beneath miles of ice. The thought that such immense features could remain hidden until the mid-20th century underscores just how much of Antarctica remains unknown. To some, the symmetry and isolation of these ranges invite speculation. Could valleys between them conceal ruins, preserved since a time when the land was green? Even more astonishing are the subglacial lakes. Lake Vostok, one of the largest, has been sealed beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice for perhaps 15 million years. Its waters are liquid only because geothermal heat rises from below, creating a hidden ecosystem untouched by the surface world. When Russian scientists drilled into the lake, they found unusual microbial DNA, sparking debates about contamination versus genuine discovery. If life can survive in such isolation, theorists ask, could traces of past human presence also remain preserved in other subglacial lakes? Historians are still debating whether these findings are purely natural phenomena or hints of something more. In 2017, another startling revelation emerged. Scientists uncovered evidence of an ancient rainforest beneath the ice of West Antarctica. Sediment cores revealed fossilized pollen and root structures, proving that 90 million years ago Antarctica supported lush vegetation, comparable to temperate forests today. Though long predating humans, this finding confirms that Antarctica has repeatedly cycled between fertile landscapes and icy tombs. For speculative historians, it provides the necessary backdrop. If warm periods occurred even in relatively recent geological time, then a window for human or proto-human habitation is not unthinkable. New satellite imagery has also revealed geometric anomalies. In 2018, images circulated of what appeared to be a massive rectangular structure protruding from the ice, some 500 meters long. Scientists explained it as an exposed rock formation shaped by glacial flow, but the resemblance to an artificial structure was uncanny. Other anomalies, including perfectly circular domes and sharply defined ridges, have been similarly interpreted. The debate remains unresolved. Natural features distorted by ice, or the remnants of something built in deep antiquity? Beyond geology, Antarctica's biological discoveries have been equally provocative. In the McMurdo Dry Valleys, researchers found microbial mats thriving in liquid brine beneath frozen lakes, ecosystems that had endured in isolation for tens of thousands of years. Elsewhere, scientists discovered nematodes and tardigrades capable of surviving extreme cold and desiccation, creatures that seemed almost alien in their resilience. If life can persist under such conditions, could it also preserve traces of human activity, sealed away in ice for millennia? The parallel between microbial survival and hypothetical human ruins is irresistible to those who speculate about lost civilizations. a strange off-topic discovery emphasizes the unexpected nature of Antarctic research. In 2016, NASA scientists testing equipment in Antarctica's ice reported detecting mysterious cosmic rays coming from beneath the continent, rather than from space above. Though later explained as anomalies in detection, the story quickly spread as evidence of hidden structures or alien technology beneath the ice. In reality, it was a reminder that Antarctica's environment distorts even our instruments, creating puzzles where none may exist. Yet each puzzle fuels the sense that something extraordinary might truly be concealed there. Climate change has also transformed the scientific picture. As glaciers retreat and ice shelves collapse, new landscapes are revealed. In 2017, a massive rift opened in the Larsen Sea ice shelf, carving an iceberg the size of Delaware. Beneath such shifting ice, scientists discovered previously hidden seafloor ecosystems, thriving in darkness for thousands of years. Each exposure raises the possibility that one day, ice retreat may uncover not just ecosystems, but something far more controversial, evidence of human or pre-human presence. For now, the changes are ecological, but they underscore the continent's fragility and its potential to reveal surprises. Historians are still debating how far to stretch these scientific revelations. For mainstream researchers, the discoveries confirm Antarctica's role as a dynamic continent with a complex past, but not as the site of lost civilizations. For alternative theorists, every new forest, lake, or anomaly adds weight to the hypothesis. The line between science and speculation remains thin. What cannot be excavated remains unknown, and what remains unknown becomes fertile ground for imagination. The great paradox of Antarctica's new revelations is that they both explain and obscure. They confirm that the continent was once green and habitable, that life can persist in its hidden lakes, and that landscapes of staggering scale remain unseen beneath its ice. Yet they also remind us of the limits of knowledge. For every discovery, there are hundreds of unanswered questions. Did humans ever step onto those fertile valleys? Did they leave traces now buried beyond reach? Or is Antarctica's mystery not one of civilization but of nature alone, writing its story in ice? Whatever the truth, the continent continues to whisper possibilities. Each new scan, each core, each anomaly is a page, torn from a frozen archive hinting that the story of Antarctica, and perhaps the story of humanity, is far from complete. Every anomaly, every myth, every map that appears to show an ice-free Antarctic coast inevitably reaches the desks of historians and archaeologists. Here, the debate becomes sharp. On one side stand mainstream scholars, cautious, insistent that no verifiable evidence places humans in Antarctica before modern times. On the other side are alternative researchers, convinced that enough smoke exists to suggest a hidden fire, that the first civilization may indeed lie under the ice, its remains beyond the reach of conventional excavation. Between them stretches a gulf of interpretation, where silence and possibility feed endless argument. Mainstream history anchors itself in evidence. No stone tools, no pottery, no skeletal remains have ever been recovered from Antarctica. Without these, academic consensus maintains that no ancient human presence existed there. Antarctica's harsh climate and its separation by the storm-lashed Southern Ocean are cited as barriers too formidable for early seafaring peoples. Archaeological chronologies firmly locate the cradles of civilization in Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, with South America providing independent development later. Within this framework, Antarctica is dismissed as a geological curiosity rather than a historical stage. Yet anomalies trouble this certainty. The Piri Reis and Orontius Phineus maps, the supposed pyramidal mountains, the unexplained radar grids, all resist neat explanation. For alternative historians, these are not errors but clues. They argue that absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when an entire continent is locked beneath 3 miles of ice. They point out that civilizations like Troy, long dismissed as myths, were eventually unearthed. If such rediscoveries were possible in the Mediterranean, why not in the far south? Historians are still debating whether skepticism itself becomes a form of blindness, preventing inquiry into possibilities that lie beyond familiar boundaries. Myth provides another arena of dispute. Mainstream scholars read flood legends, tales of gods from the sea, and stories of lost lands as symbolic narratives shaped by cultural memory and imagination. Alternative researchers see them as coded history, oral traditions preserving genuine recollections of catastrophic climate shifts and migrations from lands now lost. The myth of Atlantis, for example, is interpreted by some as poetic allegory, by others as veiled testimony of a real civilization destroyed in the Ice Age. Whether myth is metaphor or memory remains one of the most contested questions in historical debate. Science, too, fuels disagreement. Ice cores, revealing sudden climatic shifts like the Younger Dryas, demonstrate that Earth can change violently and quickly. Mainstream climatologists view these as natural processes, volcanic eruptions, oceanic circulation changes, comet impacts, without any necessary connection to human societies. Alternative theorists see them as the very events that could have buried civilizations like the one hypothesized in Antarctica. To them, the scientific data and the myths align, pointing to catastrophe on a scale sufficient to erase entire cultures. Archaeological surprises elsewhere bolster the alternative position. The discovery of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with monumental architecture dating back 11,000 years, overturned assumptions about when complex societies first appeared. Before its excavation, few believed hunter-gatherers could build on such a scale. Its existence proves that timelines can shift dramatically when evidence emerges. To those who see Antarctica as the next frontier, Göbekli Tepe is a precedent, a reminder that human history is deeper and stranger than textbooks often suggest. A strange, off-topic debate illustrates how polarized such discussions can become. In the 1960s, claims of a lost continent called Mu in the Pacific gained attention through popular books, though archaeologists dismissed them for lack of evidence. The fervour surrounding Mu mirrors the controversy over Antarctica. Both reveal the human impulse to fill gaps in history with stories of great vanished worlds. The question remains whether these impulses reflect fantasy or suppressed memory. For mainstream scholars, the burden of proof rests firmly on those making extraordinary claims. Without artifacts, they argue, speculation is not history but myth-making. For alternative thinkers, the sheer inaccessibility of Antarctica renders such demands unreasonable. Excavation is forbidden, and nature itself guards the evidence. They argue instead for a broader definition of history, one that acknowledges the potential of suppressed or erased chapters. This clash of perspectives is not merely academic, it touches on philosophy. What is history? Is it only what is confirmed by physical artifacts, or does it also include what is remembered in story, encoded in maps, or hinted at in anomalies? To insist on certainty may preserve rigour but risk blindness. To embrace speculation may invite imagination but risk delusion. The debate over Antarctica crystallizes this tension, turning a frozen continent into a mirror of how humanity seeks truth. Historians are still debating where to draw the line between possibility and fantasy. Some call for patience, trusting that technological advances, better radar, deeper drilling, genetic analysis may one day provide clarity. Others warn that such patience may allow myths to metastasize, misleading generations into chasing illusions. And yet, the mystery persists, nourished by silence, by anomalies, and by the enduring human hunger for stories of beginnings. Thus, Antarctica has become not just a geographical frontier, but an intellectual battlefield. It divides those who see only ice from those who imagine civilizations beneath it. Perhaps both are correct in their own way. Antarctica is indeed ice, yet also a vessel for imagination, holding not only glaciers but the possibility of forgotten history. Until the ice yields, the debate will continue, echoing across lecture halls, research stations, and the human mind itself. What if, beneath Antarctica's frozen crown, lie the remains of the first civilization on Earth? It is a question that hovers at the edge of plausibility, neither fully dismissed nor credibly proven. Yet to imagine it is to rewrite the story of humanity, shifting our sense of origin and destiny alike. If the continent once flourished as a cradle of culture, then the narrative of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley as firsts becomes only a continuation of something older, deeper, and more easily forgotten. Such a discovery would upend the foundations of archaeology. Civilizations are judged by evidence, tools, bones, inscriptions, ruins. To find those beneath Antarctic ice would force scholars to reconsider everything from migration patterns to technological timelines. If an Antarctic society predated known civilizations, it would mean that writing, astronomy, agriculture, or architecture might have arisen far earlier than believed. Human ingenuity, far from being a recent bloom, would be revealed as an ancient forest, cut down and buried by catastrophe. It would also reshape the role of myth. Atlantis, Zep Tepi, Viracocha, Lemuria, so long dismissed as allegory, might emerge as cultural memories of real events. Survivors of Antarctica's collapse could have carried fragments of memory into other lands, reinterpreted as stories of gods and lost ages. The myths of sudden floods, freezes, and divine teachers would take on new meaning, not as fantasy, but as history encoded in metaphor. Historians are still debating whether myth contains such kernels of truth, but an Antarctic discovery would tilt the debate decisively. The implications would extend beyond history into philosophy. Humanity's sense of uniqueness rests partly on the belief that we are the first and only global civilization. To discover predecessors beneath the ice would humble that assumption. It would remind us that civilizations are fragile, that they rise and fall with climates, and that our own achievements may one day vanish as completely as theirs. In that sense, Antarctica would be less a cradle than a warning, a frozen monument to the impermanence of greatness. Such a revelation would also provoke uncomfortable questions about secrecy. If governments or scientists already suspect ruins beneath the ice, is that knowledge being concealed? The Antarctic Treaty's restrictions on excavation, while officially environmental, may appear to some as deliberate suppression. Would humanity be prepared for the psychological shock of such a discovery? Or would it be deemed safer to leave the truth buried, another casualty of ice and time? A peculiar off-topic reflection emphasizes this. When Heinrich Schliemann uncovered the ruins of Troy in the 19th century, many scholars had long dismissed the city as myth. Its rediscovery did not only prove the story true, it forced historians to admit how fragile their certainties were. If Antarctica were to yield a similar revelation, the shock would be magnified 100-fold. It would be Troy, Atlantis, and the flood all at once, a rewriting of everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Whether such ruins exist or not, the very possibility changes our perception. Antarctica is no longer just a continent of ice. It becomes a symbol of the unknown, a reminder that history may have roots deeper than we realize. To imagine an Antarctic civilization is to admit that the map of human origins is incomplete, that the silence of ice may conceal not emptiness, but memory. If they were first, if the first civilization lies beneath Antarctica, then humanity is not at the beginning of its story, but in the middle of it. Others have risen, achieved, and fallen before us. Their ruins, if they exist, are not only relics of the past, but mirrors of our own future. Ice is merciless, but it is also patient, preserving what it entombs. One day, perhaps through melting or through new technologies, the ice may give up its secrets, and when it does, we may find ourselves staring at the face of a civilization both alien and familiar, our forgotten reflection, waiting across the gulf of ages. And so, the journey ends in silence. Antarctica's silence, vast and unbroken, stretching across an entire continent. The questions remain, suspended like frost in the air. Was it once green, alive, and inhabited? Did the first cities rise not in Mesopotamia, but in valleys now buried 3 miles deep? Or is the story of Antarctica not of civilizations lost, but of human imagination, forever projecting its hopes and fears onto the last blank place on the map? Science has given us fragments, pollen trapped in ice, microbes thriving in hidden lakes, mountain ranges and rivers carved beneath glaciers. Myths have given us whispers, of gods from the sea, of lands erased by floods and fire, of knowledge arriving from beyond. Maps have given us puzzles, anomalies that resist easy explanation. Between these fragments lies a void, one that may never be filled, but which continues to draw us back to the southernmost frontier. Perhaps Antarctica's greatest secret is not ruins or pyramids, but the reminder of how much we do not know. Each anomaly is a mirror of our own desire for beginnings, each myth a reflection of our need to believe that something came before us. The ice holds its silence, indifferent to our stories, preserving whatever truth it contains until the world is ready, or until the glaciers themselves recede. And now, as the pace of the world slows and night deepens, let the mind rest on that frozen horizon. Imagine the endless white, the ancient, mountains hidden below, the forest turned to stone, and perhaps beneath them all the faint outline of forgotten walls. Whether they exist or not, the possibility is enough to dream by. The ice keeps its secrets. Our task is only to wonder. Good night.